It was a bustling night, filled with friends at my place situated near the lively city. My house, a 2-bedroom, 2-story residence, was relatively new to me at the time, having moved in just a few months earlier. The guest list started small, with about 5 friends from my workplace, but word spread and more colleagues expressed interest in joining. Soon, there were around 15 familiar faces gathered, all set to share food, drinks, and indulge in games. Amidst the festivities, I noticed an unfamiliar face engaging in a deep conversation with Rachel, a coworker. Assuming he might have come with her, I didn't think much of it initially. However, as the night progressed, I spotted him lingering in a corner, raising suspicions. Curiosity led me to inquire about his identity, but no one seemed to recognize him. Approaching Rachel, she expressed discomfort, stating she didn't know the guy and felt he was behaving oddly. What alarmed me was when he claimed to be an old friend of mine, a claim I couldn't validate. Avoiding conflict, I hoped he'd leave, but when I couldn't spot him in the living room, I learned he'd headed upstairs. That was odd since the entire party was downstairs, raising concerns about his intentions. Partnering with my friend Ben, we checked the upper floor. A closed spare bedroom door hinted at someone's presence. Knocking yielded no response, and our nerves grew. Planning to involve authorities if he didn't leave soon, we stayed vigilant. As the night wore on, most guests departed, leaving just Ben, myself, and this mysterious figure. Heading upstairs again, we confronted the closed door, warning of police involvement if he persisted. After a tense silence, footsteps behind us signaled his retreat. He vanished after swiftly leaving through the front door. Relieved that he departed without incident, it struck me that nothing was stolen, leaving me concerned if his motive was more sinister. Fortunately, he left when the prospect of involving law enforcement arose. Does that version capture the essence of the story you provided in a different way? Just to give some context, I'm a woman, and this incident happened a few years back. I got an invite from my friends for a New Year's Eve bash in the city. I live about 10 minutes away from this bustling city, where they always have vibrant celebrations. Typically, we'd spend New Year's Eve at someone's place, but this time it was different. 5 of us planned to meet up at 10 p.m. that night. I had to work late and got off just after 9 p.m., so I couldn't arrive when the others did. After work, I changed and hurried to join them. By the time I reached the city, my friends had recently arrived and directed me to where they were. Sadly, my sense of direction has always been terrible. Finding a parking spot was a struggle, but eventually I managed to park, albeit a bit far away. That part of the city wasn't familiar to me. When I got out of the car, it seemed like a smaller park, and I realized I had to walk about 8 blocks to reach the gathering spot. The surroundings were surprisingly dark and quiet as I set off. After covering maybe 2 or 3 blocks, I had a feeling I was heading in the wrong direction. It was puzzling. I hadn't come across many people, and by then I should have seen some if I were on track. I checked my phone for directions, but I was still confused. While standing there, I heard a voice behind me, startling me. A tall guy in a black coat stood there, slightly older than me, asking if I was heading to the New Year's event. I confirmed, and he said he was headed there too, which reassured me since I was struggling to find my way. He started walking, and I followed. He walked ahead a few paces, leading the way for a few blocks. But after a while, I felt we were still off course. Despite seeing very few people around, I kept following him. After another minute or so, he slowed down and walked beside me. Suddenly, I slowed too, confused about his intentions. That's when he grabbed my arm, forcefully pushing me towards a row of parked cars by the street. He had one unlocked, presumably his. I pleaded with him to let me go, but he remained silent, continuing to push me towards his car. I struggled, trying to break free, but he was overpowering me and had opened the car door. For a moment, I thought I wouldn't escape, but I managed to loosen his grip with a kick. I kicked him again, enough to break free and start running. He chased after me, I sprinted across the street and back to the park, running until I couldn't hear him pursuing me anymore. At that point, I had no idea where I was. I quickly called one of my friends for help. It took a while, but I eventually figured out the right direction to meet them. I was anxious the entire time I was making my way there, but thankfully, I did reunite with them. Once with my friends, I called the police and narrated the entire ordeal. Looking back, I feel incredibly fortunate to have made it through that terrifying experience. This incident occurred on December 31st, 2020. We went to my aunt's place for their annual New Year's party. Every year, our whole family gathered there to celebrate. Around 11 p.m., while I was idly watching YouTube videos on my phone, Luna, my aunt's dog, suddenly started barking at the window. Confused, I glanced at the window and thought I saw someone's head, but it quickly disappeared. It startled me, and I checked again, but there was no one in sight, and it was too dark to see anything clearly. I reassured Luna that it was probably nothing, and she settled down. After about 30 minutes, my mom called for board games, and I was excited since I usually excelled at them. During our third game of Jenga, the power suddenly went out, baffling all of us, including the dogs. My dad and two uncles went to check the generator outside. They managed to restore the power, but as soon as they did, we spotted a tall figure sprinting towards them. We heard sounds of a scuffle, and one of my aunts was on the phone with the police, who promised to arrive in 5 to 10 minutes. I feared the fight might end before they got there, and unfortunately, it did. The person fled into the backyard and then into the woods. 5 minutes later, the police arrived and searched the area, but the man had vanished. They assured us they'd patrol the area for an hour, which eased my worries a bit. We returned to our games, and around 12:40 a.m., our family left. While driving home, little did I know the night wasn't over. At 2:30 a.m., I woke up to the sound of a car outside my window. Peering out, I spotted the same man from my aunt and uncle's place. I hurried to my parents' room and woke them up. My dad checked and saw the man heading towards our backyard with a crowbar. My mom dialed the police, and they promised a 5-minute response. The man attempted to break into our back door, but he failed. The police arrived promptly and arrested him. That night, I managed to sleep better, but the memory still lingers. Even now, thinking about what could have happened sends shivers down my spine.